Tonight on TrendProof, we are tracking weather, recovery, and the information tools that help communities prepare.
First, central Indiana is assessing the effects of a multi-day round of severe storms and flooding. Then, in Louisiana, a FEMA recovery center is closing today, while assistance remains available through other official channels. And finally, NASA is showing how data from space can help water managers plan for a year shaped by both intense rainfall and unusually low snow cover. This is not one nationwide emergency. It is a look at 3 points on the readiness chain: understanding an event, navigating recovery, and using better information to prepare for what comes next. The common thread is not the weather itself. Indiana, Louisiana, and Washington State are dealing with different conditions, different timelines, and different agencies. But in each case, public information is central. Forecasts and observations help officials understand what happened. Recovery notices help residents locate the services that are still available. And satellite observations can support decisions about rivers, reservoirs, and water supplies months after a storm system has moved on. Throughout this report, we will keep the facts tied to the agencies that publish them, and we will avoid treating an official notice as a promise of individual assistance or a forecast as a guarantee. In central Indiana, the National Weather Service office in Indianapolis says multiple rounds of strong to severe thunderstorms produced a tornado, downed trees and power lines, property damage, and catastrophic flooding in parts of the region. The office says heavy rain accompanied the storms, and that some places received more than 11 inches over the multi-day event. One 2-day report near New Lisbon in Henry County listed 11.5 inches. Those numbers describe observed reports, not a complete measure of every impact across the state. The Weather Service also notes that information on its event page may be updated, and that observations come from sources with different equipment and exposure. That is a useful reminder. A map or a rainfall total can show the scale of a hazard, but it does not replace local instructions or a damage assessment. A separate Coast Guard training video illustrates the kind of capacity responders prepare for. The video was recorded in Indiana on August 8th, before the reported mid-August event. It shows reserve members practicing specialized boat operations, navigation in confined urban areas, and rescue scenarios. It is public domain training footage, and it is not video of the current flooding. That distinction matters. Training footage can help viewers understand the kinds of skills responders maintain, but it should never be presented as proof of a specific disaster response. For people in an affected area, the operational question is always local. Follow county, state, and National Weather Service instructions, avoid driving through flooded roads, and rely on official updates for closures, shelters, and assistance information. In Louisiana, today's update is about access to recovery services. FEMA says the Disaster Recovery Center in Point Coupee Parish permanently closes at 5 p.m. on August 20th. The agency says residents in 6 designated parishes, Avoyelles, Lafourche, Point Coupee, St. Landry, St. Tammany, and Terrebonne, can still apply for disaster assistance through October 1st in connection with Tropical Storm Arthur, which FEMA says occurred from June 17th through June 24th. The key point is that a physical center closing does not necessarily mean all avenues for an application have ended. FEMA lists DisasterAssistance.gov, the FEMA mobile app, and its helpline as official alternatives, and its notice lists another center in Terrebonne Parish. Eligibility depends on individual circumstances and FEMA rules, so this is information about where to check, not a determination of who qualifies. Recovery communication is more than a calendar reminder. After a disaster, the information residents need may change as centers open or close, deadlines are extended, and local services adjust. That is why agency notices should be read carefully for the exact parish list, date, hours, web address, and phone number. FEMA's release also says the centers offer assistive technology and describes how to request reasonable accommodation or language support. For anyone watching outside Louisiana, the broader lesson is similar. After an emergency, save links and official numbers early, and check them again before traveling to a location or making decisions based on an old social media post. The third story moves upstream, literally and scientifically. NASA's latest report examines a Washington state example of how drought conditions, snow cover, river forecasts, hydropower, and public safety can all be connected. The agency says the winter of 2025 to 2026 was unusually warm across much of the West, meaning a larger share of precipitation fell as rain instead of snow. NASA says January, February, and March each had the lowest western snow cover for that month in the agency's MODIS satellite record, going back to 2001. NASA describes the Cowlitz River as a year of water extremes. In its account, an atmospheric river in December brought intense rainfall to the Pacific Northwest. The broader rain-heavy pattern sent water downstream quickly instead of building the mountain snowpack that would normally melt more gradually into summer. NASA says snowpack in its example remained at roughly 20 to 50% of normal levels. It also notes that Washington placed every watershed under a drought emergency on April 8th. The point is not that a single data layer explains a disaster. Water managers have to balance changing weather, reservoir space, stream gauges, snow stations, operating rules, public safety, and other demands all at once. That is where satellite observations enter the picture. NASA says its snow cover and vegetation data are used in a tool called hydroforecast alongside weather forecasts and actual river flow measurements. The agency says the tool can help forecast river flow from hours to days ahead, supporting decisions by reservoir managers, hydropower producers, water utilities, and government agencies. NASA also says Tacoma Power used the forecasts alongside stream gauges, snow stations, and operator judgment. That last phrase is important. A forecasting tool is decision support, not an autopilot. It can improve situational awareness, but responsible operations still depend on human expertise, local measurement, and the rules that govern each system. So what should viewers take from these three stories? First, use official weather offices for event facts and local warnings, especially when a situation is still developing. Second, when a recovery notice is issued, look for the exact deadline and official alternatives, rather than assuming a building closure ends the process. Third, remember that information from satellites, gauges, forecasts, and local observers can work together. The strongest public readiness system is not one app, one forecast, or one post. It is a chain of verified information, observations, institutions, local guidance, and people who know when to check for the next update. In the days ahead, there are specific indicators worth watching. In Indiana, follow the National Weather Service and local emergency management updates as the agency's event information and local recovery picture evolve. In Louisiana, the immediate milestone is the Point Coupé Center's closure today, while the broader FEMA application deadline listed in the release is October 1st. In the Pacific Northwest, NASA's case study is a window into how weather patterns and water conditions can continue to shape reservoir and river decisions beyond one season. These are separate stories. Their shared lesson is that timely information is most useful when it is specific, sourced, and checked against the authority responsible for the next decision.
There is another practical lesson in the way these agencies describe their work. Uncertainty should be explained, not hidden. A weather office can report observed rainfall while continuing to update an event review. A recovery agency can tell people where to apply without predicting the outcome of every application. And a science agency can show that satellite observations improve a forecast model without claiming that the model eliminates risk. That kind of precision is not a weakness. It is how public institutions help people make better decisions when conditions are changing. For viewers, the most useful habit is a simple one. Match the question to the source. If the question is whether a warning is active, check the responsible weather office. If the question is whether a recovery center is open, check the agency or local government notice issued for that disaster. If the question is how a scientific tool works, read the agency's explanation of the data, its limits, and how it is used alongside on-the-ground observations. That approach takes a little longer than reacting to a headline, but it can prevent a great deal of confusion. It also helps keep local stories in proportion. A training exercise is not a live rescue. A deadline notice is not a benefit decision. A map of snow cover is not, by itself, a forecast for every household or river basin. The value comes from putting each item in context, what it shows, what it does not show, and which official source will provide the next verified update. One final point about preparedness. Good information is most useful before a stressful moment arrives. Households can decide now which official weather alerts they rely on, where they will find county emergency information, and how they will preserve important records after an event. Those steps do not eliminate risk, and they are not a substitute for local instructions, but they can make an official update easier to find when time matters. For public agencies, the challenge is similar. A clear update should say what changed, who is affected, what date or deadline applies, and where people can go for the original source.
That is the standard used in this report. We have not used third-party television clips or social media footage as evidence. Where a current, reusable visual was not available, the video identifies realistic generated motion as illustrative. And where official footage is used, the lower panel identifies the source and explains its context. That distinction is especially important during weather events, when dramatic images can travel farther than verified information. The most shareable post is not always the most useful one. Before sharing, check the date, the place, the source agency, and whether a video actually depicts the event being discussed. Those 4 questions can help turn a fast-moving update into a more reliable public